Welcome to Tuesdays with Tom, a Procurious podcast series featuring exclusive insights from Tom Derry, CEO of the Institute for Supply Management. The topic of today's podcast is making an impact. Procurious founder Tanya Siri will discuss with Tom why supply chain sustainability is good for business, the challenge of modern slavery, and the enormous benefits of diversity in your supply management team. Over to you, Tom and Tanya.
This year on Procurious, we've been delighted to partner with SAP Ariba to drive content for their Procure with Purpose campaign. As part of this, we've hosted a webinar on modern slavery and published articles about organisations that are fighting plastic waste, the Great Barrier Reef, working with social enterprises and supply diversity. As you know, Tom, this is quite a broad topic. And it's really hard to pinpoint exactly when it happened, and I guess I'd be interested to hear from you whether you do think it's happened. But CSR and sustainability in supply management has really moved from a nice-to-have to a business imperative. And it would seem that companies are not only reacting to customer demand for increased sustainability, but because it makes financial sense to do so. I guess I point to Mars. I think they just announced last week that they'll be spending $1 billion on sustainability because they expect that greener chocolate bars will increase profits. So I know it's a long-winded introduction, Tom, but do you really think we've come to the point where, I guess it's a tipping point with sustainability because the majority of businesses are now seeing the financial benefits?
Yeah, there's no question, Tanya, that there's been a major shift in the way corporations regard this whole area. I mean, I think you could say that there was a time when it was almost merely a PR strategy, and there wasn't a lot of corporate effort put behind it. But those days are long gone now. I mean, I'm familiar with the chief procurement officer of a major food manufacturer here in the United States, and one day the Rainforest Action Network was protesting on their corporate campus, and the CEO said, "Hey, what's going on here?" And the CPO said, "I don't know, but I'll find out." And it came down to the sustainable sourcing of palm oils, which is a major food ingredient. And what we're realizing now is that our supply chains can create these unexpected or unintended consequences. In this case, palm oil that was being sourced from Indonesia was incentivizing local farmers to burn the local rainforest in order to plant palm trees for palm oil production. And, of course, we're now jeopardizing this incredible biodiverse resource, and we didn't have any sense of, that was the consequence of just trying to get, the palm oil to make the product. So they respond to customer demand that way. My own daughter makes her consumer purchase decisions based on how she views the sustainable practices of the company she does business with.
I know. When I'm shopping with my children, they say, "Mum, is it fair trade? Is it fair trade?" They're really forcing me to look at the label.
So it's a real thing. So and companies realize that if they lose that customer, think back to Exxon Valdez, which I know is a dated example, but the boycotts that Exxon experienced because of the damage of that oil tanker spill off the coast of Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
You don't recover from those kinds of experiences today. I mean, consumers walk away and you never get that business back. But there's another reason why companies have to take it seriously. In the stock market, companies like J.P. Morgan are now actually publishing ratings of companies based on what they call ESG. That stands for Environment, Sustainability, and Governance. So it's not just financial metrics that are driving stock prices anymore. It's your score on your environmental performance, how sustainable you are, and your governance practices as a company. So when that starts to drive stock price, that gets everyone's attention, believe me.
It absolutely does. And there's no doubt that one of these supply chain shocks or reputational type events has a severe impact on share price and, brand equity. And I think the more that companies can talk about the great work they're doing within their supply chain, the more they'll sort of shock-proof those impacts, and there's been some great research done on that. Look, we talked a little bit then about the environment, but obviously modern slavery is a huge challenge facing the profession. Like you said, transparency is the key. I think they're estimating at the moment there's 21 to 46 million people in slavery around the world. I guess the good news is we're seeing legislation come through. The Modern Slavery Acts have been passed by France, the UK. Australia's in the early stages, I should say, of creating its own act. But what's your perspective, Tom? How can supply management professionals discover and weed out contemporary slavery in their supply chains?
Well, there's no question. First of all, the number you just quoted, between 20 and 40 million people worldwide. What a sobering statistic. What a terrible situation. Companies are doing amazing things. I mean, you're probably aware of Nestle, for instance, that Nestle is the producer of the Purina line of pet food products, and fish are a major ingredient in pet food products. They, on their own, investigated their own supply chain and found that the Thai fishing fleet, which is a source of a lot of their fish, was using impressed labor. And so good for them that they immediately identified the problem and proactively went out to address it rather than waiting for someone to discover it and then appearing defensive and reactive. We'll see more and more companies take that kind of stance, I think, because they have to. I mean, it's not just protecting your company's reputation. Sure, it's that, but it's the recognition we all share as humans that this is just a morally reprehensible way to have business conducted, and none of us want to be a part of it.
Once again, it's such a broad topic, so I want to just jump to another dimension on this procure with purpose scale, which is diversity. As we all know, this just doesn't refer to diversity in our supply base, but having diversity within our own team. And I understand ISM's actually built a whole conference around this issue, I should say. But for you, if we just looked at supplier diversity, what are the benefits?
Well, there's no question about the benefits of both elements. So supplier diversity, I mean, we need to make sure that our supply bases reflect the kinds of communities where we do business. Right? We also need to make sure that our teams internally and our leadership teams reflect the kinds of communities where we do business. And there's a formal expectation of that. So, yeah, that's a sort of protective strategy. More importantly, I think from a diversity and inclusion point of view is the idea that we broaden our point of view, right? We're more sensitive to cultural issues. Maybe you've seen or heard of the controversies with Pepsi Cola and some of the ads they've come out that once they were released, people said, wait a minute, you're trying to make a statement about diversity and inclusion, and you're actually really offending people. So, a diverse team will heighten heighten your awareness of those kinds of issues before they get out into the public domain and embarrass you. So, you'll have a multitude of perspectives on how to solve problems and the regional variations and differences. It's just too important for us to ignore it. It's a critical set of data to making the best business decisions represented in having a diverse team. I mean, you're right. ISM's got a long-standing leadership position in this area. We've got a formal statement on the value of diversity to the profession. We do organize the conference. We even sponsor a certification to help people become leaders of diversity efforts on behalf of their companies.
What about in your membership base within ISM? Are you seeing some statistics within the profession that are moving in the right direction on diversity?
Yeah, actually, this was a topic of conversation at our most recent conference, which was in February. Really interesting that we're not actually having difficulty attracting up-and-coming talent, diverse talent into the profession. In fact, that's a real strength. By the way, as a little side note, Tanya, our own research indicates that women CPOs, another element of diversity, actually earn more on average than their male counterparts, which I think is the only profession.
Oh, I love that statistic. That might be our headline for this discussion.
So we're attracting great talent, but someone like Shelley Stewart, who's been a former chairman of the board of ISM and a pioneer in putting diversity on the agenda for this profession, he points out that when he goes to meetings of the Supply Chain 50 or other the major leadership organizations, there are only one or two people that look like Shelley in the room, if that. And he said, so we need to do better at getting the leadership reflecting diversity in its full range, not just growing the ranks of the middle management teams.
Well, I guess from my own perspective, Tom, you've always been a great mentor for me. And I guess having a diversity profile myself, or a diverse profile, you've certainly done your bit to champion the cause from everything I've seen. So thank you so much for the discussion today on Procure with Purpose. It's a very broad topic, but I think we've touched on some vital points that our listeners will value. So thank you.
Thank you for listening to our Tuesdays with Tom podcast, powered by Procurious and ISM. Stay tuned for more podcasts in this series, which will be made available for streaming in the learning area on procurious.com.